You know people need your product, you know it can provide value, and you think you've done everything right to make sure people were all over it at launch. But that's not the reality. The product is not exactly flying off the shelf, and it even seems like it might be failing. Things are just not moving fast enough. When this happens, founders blame a host of other things: distribution, demand, regulation, timing, but that's usually not the key issue. The real issue is that the market never understood what the product is for. You have a positioning issue. By the end of this video, you will understand what exactly the telltale signs are that show you that your positioning is off the mark before you get lost in a sea of forgotten fintech products. Hi, I'm Ramsey, and I help early stage startups with their storytelling, go-to-market, and wider marketing, and I've driven billions of dollars in enterprise value for clients. In this video, we'll be looking at how positioning breaks down in early stage fintech teams, why product quality alone can't compensate for vague or fragmented positioning, and the early warning signs that tell you that your positioning is off before growth stalls. So, if you're building something that works but find it hard to explain, sell, or scale, this video will help you show where that disconnect might be happening. There's a belief that I constantly see within early stage fintech teams, and that is, if the product is good enough, the traction will follow. So teams double down on shipping more features, splurging more on marketing, and building bigger sales teams with the hope that they'll just magically find success. But here's the problem. Markets don't evaluate products directly, they evaluate their perception and understanding of the products themselves. So this idea itself is false. It's not exactly correct. And if the market's understanding of the product is vague or unstable, and they can't clearly see the value propositions or if it's the right fit for them, then no amount of quality will make up for it, because they'll never be able to experience it. The fintech market is extremely broad and competitive across all segments. And because fintech products are usually more complicated than those in other industries and hold more emotional weight because they're dealing with money, buyers usually take a bit more time to pick their solution so they can make sure it's definitely the right one for them. So if you want to help potential customers decipher if you're the right solution for them, you need to understand three things. One is that people don't take interest based on your complete feature set. They don't experience the architecture of your solution, and they don't experience your internal conversations. What will, in fact, help them understand whether this product is useful for them is the following. Firstly, it's a category label. Secondly, it's a rough comparison to something that they already know. And thirdly is a clear point of differentiation. And your positioning helps them understand whether these shortcuts are obvious and available or not. If the differentiation is fuzzy and unclear, then your product standing will be fuzzy and unclear. If the category of product is unclear, then the overarching value proposition you're trying to push is going to be unclear as well. And if your comparison is wrong, you're going to set the wrong expectations. And this is where many people go wrong. So, how can you tell if your positioning is missing the mark? Well, most early stage products have positioning that is too broad. It's not sharp enough and doesn't showcase the core value proposition. The product can do a lot of things, which internally might feel great because you feel like you're accomplishing lots and you're tackling different challenges and giving flexibility to users. But externally, it's not that easy for the end user to understand what the core value proposition is because nothing is primary. Now, to assess this, the best way is to ask 3 different people on your team what they think the product is. And you'll likely get 3 very different answers, each one emphasizing a different aspect of the product or a different value proposition that it might put across. And those all might be true, but the market doesn't reward what's true, it rewards what is clear and what resonates with that target audience. Now, another place that this might break down is across different audience segments. So for example, the story that you tell investors will sound one way, the story that you put on your website and in your messaging on social media is another way, and in your sales decks and in your demos is something else. And again, none of them are wrong, but they're likely not anchored to the same core idea. So every time someone finds your product and goes through your sales funnel, they're forced to reinterpret it at every different touch point because you're telling them different things at different stages, and that ultimately resets their mental model instead of building upon it. There's also a really common builder level trap here. A lot of founders talk about their products based on how it's built versus the transformation and the outcomes that they bring. They talk about systems and architecture as opposed to benefits and, again, transformation and trade-offs compared to other competitors and what makes them truly different. And this might sound great initially, you tell the buyer what your product can do, but you're shifting a lot of cognitive load onto the buyer. They don't want to know what features you have, they want to know how those can help them and transform their life. That's what they're coming to you for a transformation, for a benefit. They don't want to have to be a detective and do all the interpretation work. You've got to make it very clear for them. They want to be able to think that, oh, this is the right product for me, and just go ahead and buy it or use it. Now, the outcome of poor positioning might not just be outright rejection, it might just be a lot of confusion and hesitation. Your sales conversations might stall, the people who come to your site might not convert, your marketing might be doing fine but not really hitting the mark, and ultimately, you're going to be moving a bit slower at every single touch point in your sales funnel. It feels like you're close to a sale, but it's never really clicking. And if you feel like people are getting to these calls or asking a lot of questions and clarifying what the product does and just really elongating the process out, it means that you haven't done a good job in positioning your product. You shouldn't have to really try that hard to convince people to use your product if your positioning is really strong. And so when you have weak positioning, people and leads are leaking at every single touch point, and everything is just a lot slower. It's really important to understand that product strength cannot compensate for weak positioning. Because ultimately, perception is reality before reality can kick in. And users will never experience the product if they don't feel it's right for them. In order to get your product adopted by the market, you have to build the following 3 pillars. The first is to build the context as to where your product exists. The second is to build relevance within the market. And then third is you need to be able to build trust to make sales. And that's what strong positioning can help you do. It's an accelerator for defining those 3 things. In the fintech space, uncertainty about a product does not default to curiosity. It defaults to hesitation, and you need to make sure that you unseat any sort of doubt. When your positioning is vague, your buyer confidence is diminished, your sales cycles are stretched, your marketing feels inefficient, and users may hesitate even when the value is clearly there. And here's the worst part. The better your product is, the more painful this whole situation becomes. And that's because your expectations rise faster than people are able to understand your product. You've built something powerful, but the market can't understand that yet. Your positioning is the interpreter between the market and your product. And through proper positioning, you get to tell the market what matters, what doesn't, and how the value should be perceived. You get to set the perception. When you set the rules on how people should value your product and your market, you're able to engineer their perspective so that they place your product above all else. And without any of this, the market will usually do the translation for you, but much worse. They'll reach their own conclusions and likely go ahead with any other product that has a much clearer positioning, even if it's not the ideal positioning or even completely the right product for them. When you're able to successfully engineer your positioning in the market, a few things happen without you even making any changes to your product. The product feels easier to sell, the right buyers will self-select, conversations start at a higher level, and momentum will compound through every touch point that a customer goes through, as opposed to resetting every single time. Again, nothing about the product has really changed, only how it's being understood. And that's why positioning is such a fundamental piece of any business. And if you want to learn more about how you can successfully position your fintech product, then check out the video I've linked in the description below, where I go over the 4 key components of every successful brand positioning exercise and 2 ways that you can win the positioning battle. Finally, here is the big takeaway from this video. Product quality is mandatory, but it's not enough. Positioning is what determines whether quality is recognized or even deemed relevant at all. And when it isn't done properly, even great products fail. So make sure you dedicate the right time to figuring out exactly how you should position your product. Otherwise, all your other work is going to go to waste. If you found this video useful, feel free to drop a like, a comment, and subscribe, and share this with any other founders who might be dealing with this right now. And if you want help applying this to your own product or business, feel free to get in touch with us through the link in the description, and we'll catch you in the next video.